You know, it was a very humiliating experience to be rounded up by your own government. It was very painful because you not just were cast as enemies, you lost everything materially.
After the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor in December of 1941, the United States government decided Japanese Americans were enemies of the state. Within months, over 100,000 U.S. citizens and legal residents were ordered to leave their homes and report to one of 10 remote internment centers. Manzanar, in the high California desert, is one of those internment camps.
No, this is Janice. And
that's Jess. That's
this you.
Okay. Yeah, little fat kid. This was in Manzanar. And it looks like, what? Do you think maybe it was 12 months old?
Yes.
And then this is Janice and Mom with the bear behind.
Oh, yeah.
If you look at our pictures, every group of folks that are being evacuated were all dressed up. Can you imagine being ordered to come into camp and
wearing their best clothes?
Yes, wearing their best clothes
and coming early.
Yes,
right.
and being on time. And being on time. It is absolutely asinine when I look back at it. And if it were to happen today, oh my, I would raise such hell.
Mom, we need more Spam?
Here, I'll get it for you. My father never saw me. My mother was pregnant with me, and he gave up his citizenship and left with his family to go back to Japan. And my mother was not going to give hers up.
Not me. I said, I'll join the waves, the wax, anything, but I sure am not leaving America.
800 volunteers from the Japanese American community came up here, including my uncle, to build the barracks. So they dressed in their finest, they showed up early, and they built the barracks where they were to be housed. The barracks were cobbled together out of scrap lumber and tar paper. There was no insulation. There was no privacy because they were just these 20 by 25 foot boxes.
Prefabricated barracks spring up. It's in no sense a concentration camp, but a city with its front yard in the snow-peaked Sierra Nevadas. Here, eventually, 12,000 will live and work.
I came to camp when I was almost 10 years old. We left early in the morning. It took us 9 hours to drive here. And when we got here, it was really dusty, and it was nothing but just barracks there. So it was very stark. It was like being abandoned, yeah.
I think when you come out here and you feel the heat and you see the dust, and some years it's very windy, the dust is going up your nose and your hair is just flying everywhere, you know, you really kind of can appreciate what the people went through.
Where the Japanese Americans lived was basically 1 square mile, and it was enclosed by a 5-strand barbed wire fence. There were also 8 guard towers. Security was really high, very tight.
One thing I'll never forget my grandmother telling me is that when they first got here, my great-grandmother would sit under the apple orchards and cry and sob that she couldn't give her children a better life, that she couldn't provide them the opportunities that she wanted to.
There you go. Okay? And I'll hook your line up. Camp was boring, there's nothing to do. We had to leave everything we had behind, so you made whatever toys you could make out of the material you had on hand. We had no other options. We were stuck behind a barbed wire fence. So we made the best we can out of it. My older brother, he heard one day about some of the guys who said they went fishing in the local creek. So we'd climb under the barbed wire and leave camp. We never had permission to go. We just snuck out of camp by ourselves.
The war, of course, ends in August 1945, but the camp didn't close until November 21st of 1945. And that is because a lot of the people who were here had nowhere to go.
Camp life was really bad because we were in captivity. We could do what we wanted to do. But a rougher life, a more devastating part of my life history is when we came out of camp. because in camp you were fed 3 times a day. You had the necessities of life.
Before the war, Setz Tamita's father had a thriving trucking business in Southern California, and the family lived comfortably. When they left Manzanar, they had no home, no money, and faced rampant prejudice. The only job Mr. Tamita could find was cleaning rabbit pens.
And the place to live was a 2-car garage. All it has was one single light bulb. No water, no heat, no electricity, no gas. We had 2 beds, and 9 of us slept in that room there. So you talk about harsh conditions. Camp was okay compared to that.
When the community emerges from camp, with many people dispossessed of all of their possessions and livelihood and houses, they had to bury the pain and anger and frustration in order to survive.
For years, even mentioning the internment experience was taboo among Japanese Americans. Finally, in 1969, 250 students and activists returned to reclaim their history. Now, thousands make the annual pilgrimage to remember past injustices and raise awareness of other civil rights struggles.
We're here to continue the legacy, bringing friends of the community together to remember what happened at Manzanar in hopes of something like this never happening again.
My mother became connected to these young students and this Asian Pride movement and came back to Manzanar in '69. And Manzanar became bigger than life over the course of the next year or two.
Sue Kunitomi Embry was really the driving force behind the creation of Manzanar Historic Site. She began organizing the pilgrimages and, for almost 40 years was involved in preserving this site. She was very patriotic, not someone whose patriotism was sort of mindless nationalism, but defending your country and making your country stand for what its Constitution says it stands for.
I want people 50 years from now to remember what was there. Although it was a negative place, we want to turn it around to be positive, so that people will always remember that America is a democracy. Sue Kunitomi Embry.
After that first visit, Sue Embry threw herself into the cause. The next year, she brought her children.
So here I am, 11 years old, 12 years old, and I get to come to Manzanar, to the next pilgrimage, and we pull up, and I look around and I said, well, where's Manzanar? And I'm thinking, what the heck? All this excitement, all this animated discussion, all this time, and there's nothing here. There's desert.
After the war, the camp was quickly torn down. If not for a small monument built to honor Manzanar's dead, no one would know the camp had ever existed.
No one ever dreamed we would have a park. No one ever dreamed we would have the national government take responsibility for this, and many people didn't want them to. There were large numbers of even former internees that felt that, why are you bringing this up now? It's in the past. It's going to call unnecessary negative attention to us. There's people out there that already hate us. Don't give them more ammunition.
For 2 decades, Sue Embry and others pushed the government to commemorate the site. Finally, in 1988, Congress issued a formal apology and paid $20,000 in reparations to every surviving internee. 4 years later, the Manzanar National Historic Site was established. At the end of every pilgrimage, former internees tell their heart-wrenching stories.
The infant mortality inside the camps was 10 times higher than outside the camps. So, that's incredible.
Why was
to believe that children were deemed as dangerous to this country.
My family lived this. I imagine my grandmother with 5 children, you know, teens on down to my mom who was 3, which is the same age my daughter is now. This can't happen again, ever.
My dad had tractors, he had trucks, we had 2 cars. He must have been doing fairly well financially. And then, of course, the war started and everything came to an end. And that's how I'm sure many Japanese families were affected. It was just totally devastating.
Other civil rights activists share their stories too.
My wife, they always harass her, tell her to go back. This still goes on.
As a Muslim American, I've been discriminated so many times because of stereotypes that have been presented by the media. People telling me, I saw it on MSNBC, I saw it on this TV, you know, literally.
You had to speak out because nobody spoke out for us. And it makes a difference.
These kind of things are going on now. And I think we tell the story because we really feel our country, I don't think they've learned much about prejudice.
A lot of people think of the national parks as the great natural areas and the great recreational areas. But I think one of the really neat things about the national park system is that we also preserve our history. And not just the glowing parts of our history, but in some of the newer parks, like Manzanar, like some of the civil rights sites, we are actually talking about some of the not so wonderful parts of our history.
Roots were pulled up, people's lives were altered forever. It was an important part of our history because we have a constitution and it says that we have rights. And these people basically were told that it doesn't apply to you.
Having Manzanar as a part of the national park system allows people to come and learn about this chapter of history. And I think it gives people an opportunity to think about their own civic responsibilities and what we can each do to help America live up to its promises.
How the government treats the citizens, that's our story. So I think if we don't have that conversation, we're not doing what we should be doing here at Manzanar.
We want to shout to the world that we are a great nation, willing to say that we are sorry about what we did. And not only are we a democracy, but we work at it, for all of us. The working at it is the important part. Sue Kunitomi Embry.